already, Umar?
Yeah. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So continuing discussing Al-Arba'in An-Nawawi, and last week we started to discuss Hadith Al-Khamis. So it's the fifth Hadith in this particular collection by Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah, where I have collected concerning specific Hadith that is referred to as Jawami Al-Kalim. And the Hadith that we started discussing last week is the Hadith of Aisha, which mentioned concerning that where it mentioned Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad. And that he mentioned another narration, Man amila amalan laysa li amruna fahuwa rad. So we discussed concerning the hadith regarding takhrij of the hadith, those who have narrated hadith outside Abu Bukhari and Muslim, and we mentioned Abu Dawood, and also mentioned Ibn Majah, and also others who have mentioned others who have collected this hadith, but then clarify that those were others that some of those may be incorrect. Then also discussed concerning Aisha radhiyallahu anha, or mentioned something about the life of Aisha radhiyallahu anha. Then we discuss the hadith, start discussing concerning the hadith by mentioning certain virtues of this hadith and other matters. So inshallah ta'ala we'll continue from where we had stopped regarding concerning of those points that can be taken from this particular hadith. So when we left off, we discussed concerning the hukum regarding al-bidah, that is something which is manhihan, it is something which is forbidden in Islam, and also it is something which is haram, and also for a person. So whether the person is the one who's initiating this bid'ah, the person who's the one who have come up with this idea regarding this act, then it is forbidden. And also second, regarding anyone who act according to this act. So any act that's said to be of a bid'ah and a person act upon it, then also that is unacceptable and that is haram what they're doing and forbidden what they're involved in. So the next point that they discuss concerning al-bid'ah, that looking at concerning bid'ah, that is something that is said, something which is manhihan, it is something which is forbidden in Islam. So it's way enough concerning that, it of those things concerning bid'ah, it is something which is forbidden in Islam. So we have two things. Either Muslim, you have two things that is somewhat forbidden in Islam. One, al-bid'ah, and the next is thing which is ma'asi. So things of ma'asiyah, so acts that of sinful acts, and also we have bid'ah. The ulama have their discussion regarding which is worse, the person carrying out an act of bid'ah or the person involved in something which is haram, something which is forbidden. Both are forbidden. Bid'ah is forbidden and also ma'asiyah is forbidden. But which is worse? So of the ulama, they are more inclined towards concerning bid'ah is a worse situation. Following an act of bid'ah is a worse situation, and they have come to this conclusion, or they have mentioned this view that the mentions of the Salaf have mentioned regarding a comparison regarding al-bid'ah and ma'asi, and which is worse. So the statement of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah that mentioned in al-bid'ah ahab ila al-iblis min ma'asi, that he mentioned that bid'ah is more beloved to Iblis than that of ma'asi. So he showed that according to the statement of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, then he mentioned فَقَالُوا لِأَنَّ الْمَعَصِيَةِ, because ma'asi, the explanation, because ma'asi yutab min, that a person who falls into something which is a sinful deed, that they'll make repentance from it. Wal bid'ah la yutab min, but as for bid'ah, a person does not make repentance from it. So that's what I mentioned, that bid'ah is more severe as a something which is wrong for a person to fall into. So that shows regarding that, and that's the statement that is used regarding that, to make that comparison, that ma'asi and bidah, which is worse, al-bidah. And they use the statement of Sufyan al-Thawri and others. But as for the statement of Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, that some of the of those who have looked at the athar of Sufyan al-Thawri, as we just mentioned, in al-bidah ahab ila al-iblis min al-ma'asi, that they mentioned that, and then concerning of those who have narrated this athar, we have al-Akai in his book Shar I'tiqad al-Sunnah, al-Bayhaqi fi Shu'ab al-Iman, and also Abu Na'im in his book al-Hilya. So those who have narrated this athar and Sufyan al-Thawri. But I mentioned that in this isnad, that can somewhat one of the narrators in this particular athar, that one of the narrators who's all the turuq and others who have narrated this athar, they mention turuq من طرق أن يحيى ابن يمان العجلي فيه كلام كثير بل وضعيف. So they mention regarding this person, Yahya ibn Yaman, that this particular narrator of this athar, that is that of those who narrate his athar, that is considered to be someone who's weak. There's kalam about him. So of those who all that is weak, so they mention that athar is somewhat daif. This athar regarding of Sufyan al-Thawri, regarding al-bidah, inna al-bidah ahab ila al-iblis min al-ma'asi, that this athar is something which is daif, even though the meaning is correct. And you find other evidence to prove that this is the case. So there's other supporting evidence showing that bidah is worse than ma'asi. But overall, the ulama have discussed that comparison regarding al-bidah. So I mentioned that al-bidah, as we mentioned, definition of bidah, that a person do it as a form of qurbah, as a form of act of ibadah, think that what they're doing is correct. But as for ma'asi, the person that what he's doing is wrong. So he's open for correction, because he doesn't see what he's doing as something which is, this is a part of Islam, this represents Islam. So the person is more likely to make a tawbah from ma'asi, a person that he used to, for example, do a particular ma'asi. But at least he knows that what he's doing is wrong, and he will not say this is from Islam. So he is open to make repentance. As for the person who is involved in matters relating to al-bidah, they hold that this bidah is a part of Islam, this represents Islam. So the person more likely will never, it's difficult for the person to make repentance from this act. The next matter they discuss regarding as-sunnah, or regarding concerning this topic, regarding concerning outlining concerning of the matter that relates to al-bidah, that he discussed concerning, as mentioned by Ibn Uthaymeen and others, when he explained this hadith in his Sharh of Al-Arba'in An-Nawawi, that he mentioned regarding concern that regarding al-bidah, as he referred to concerning, as the ulama referred to concerning that, he mentioned regarding that of the principle that relates to al-ittiba, opposite of bidah, that of those things that he mentioned that they call concerning muwafaqat al-sunnah, that a person can somewhat do an act that it falls in line with the sunnah, where it doesn't fall into bidah, and that way it can somewhat to judge that something is within the sunnah and not outside of the sunnah, where the person fall into bidah, that there are certain things the person should use as a measuring stick. They call them muwafaqat sunnah. So they mention umur muwafaq li sunnah, that there are things that are in place to ensure that the person can measure that is in line with the sunnah, and that he does not go in contrary to the sunnah. So of those things they mentioned, there are 6 umur, or umur sit, that there are 6 things that the person use as a scale to measure that what they're involved in is a part of the sunnah and not outside of the sunnah. So those 6 things that he mentioned as-sabab, which means concerning the reason. So the person concerning that the reason that behind what the person doing, with the reason behind why the person is doing what they're doing. With the person, for example, that the person doing an act of ibadah, and he mentioned regarding that, that the reason that is attached to it, it is also valid. So the person carrying out an act, that also the reason attached to it, that is linked to it, that is associated with it, that it is in line with the sunnah. For example, Ibn Uthaymeen, in the example that he gave, so a person enter his house, every time the person enter his house, he make rakatain. Every time one enter his house, he make rakatain as a form of qurbah. So I said, this is the person not doing this act for the right reason. The reason is not correct. So the reason of doing this act is not justifiable, it's not a valid reason. That every time the person enters his house, he believes that as a form of ibadah, that he has to perform rak'atayn. This is done for the masjid. So he's taking something that is done for the masjid to his house. So that reason that they do not fall in line with the Sharia and doesn't go in line with the Sunnah. So that's concerning of those things that the sabab must also coincide with the Sharia. The second of those things they mentioned al-jins. The second of those things, al-jins. Regarding concern that the jins concern that within that group type, that act must fall within the type which is legislated. So for example, that as a form of ibadah, regarding referred to as concerning al-udhiyah. So al-udhiyah for Eid. Nam. So udhiyah, you can slaughter certain animals. We can slaughter sheep, goat, cows, and the likes. But the person believes that as a part of his udhiyah, he's going to slaughter a donkey. Or so the person will do a donkey, so rather than doing an elephant, or he's going to do a horse. So these are not from the animals to be slaughtered for udhiyah. So it has set animals, but the person has to stay within that group type that is allowed. If he goes outside the group type that is allowed, then the person will fall into, then the person I was mentioned that is not doing thing according to the sunnah. He's doing thing khilaf of sunnah. We're concerned the jins, that group type, the person has to stay within that group type that is allowed. The third of those things mentioned, al-qadar wal-adad. The third of those things that the person has to bear in mind, so as not to fall into al-bidah and to stay within the sunnah, that he also ensure that he's doing things according to the qadr wal-adad, that he does things according to the number and the limits that are set. So he stay within the limitations that have been set by the Sharia to ensure that he does not fall into al-bidah. So example that is given that for al-dhuhr, the person that is going to pray for dhuhr an additional rak'ah. The person going to pray for dhuhr additional rak'ah of 5 rak'ah. So that becomes the person of falling into bidah by adding to what? The limits that have been set. The person now adding to the limits that have been set. So this will become something which is the person going in contrary to the adad wal qadar, which is the limits that have been set. Then also they mention amongst these that also the person fall in line regarding concerning al-makan. So also the person ensure that act, that the makan, the place, that was zaman. So also regarding, so they mentioned concerning that az-zaman wal makan, that both are separate. So of those would be az-zaman, that a person offer that act within the time frame allowed in the Sharia or given in the Sharia. So the person so that's the thing the person also have to take into consideration and to understand. That also a part of muwafiq li sunnah, coincide the sunnah, that a person does that act within the time frame, the time limits set by the Sharia, and not to go outside. So that's concerning those matters. So regarding the mention, so in different ways, al-Arafah, that person, for example, zaman, that Ramadan. So the person will do Siyam Ramadan. In the month of Ramadan, they said, no, we're going to fast in the month of December. We're living in the West. December is the time of their festival and what their main festival. So we're going to fast in that month because of all that they're involved in. Then this is not the case. That zaman, regarding Siyam Ramadan, it is fixed and cannot be changed for whatever reason may be. So the zaman must be a consistency regarding the zaman. And also next, regarding al-makan, that also the person do things within the time, the place that have been stipulated by the Sharia. So a time and also the place that the Sharia have allowed the person to carry that act. So regarding concerning that al-ittikaf, so the person want to do ittikaf, a male inside his house. So itikaf inside a person's house in Ramadan, that is not the place for itikaf. It's to be done in the masajid. So the person regarding al-makan, that the Sharia fixed concerning al-makan, so the person stick to that place that been stipulated by the Sharia. And the sixth of those concerning kayfiyah, the person also have to consider regarding kayfiyah, regarding the how that act to be done. So regarding al-wudu, regarding salah, to be carried out in a particular way. Wudu and salat, for example, they are to be done in a particular way. So the way of doing those things, it is somewhat set. The person regarding concerning salat, that have to be done as stipulated by the Sharia. To do things contrary to this, then the person now fall into mukhalif li-sunnah wa Sharia. So those are the 6 things regarding that the person have to consider regarding holding to the sunnah, ensure the person stay within the bounds of the sunnah and not fall into al-bidah. So, so that's concerning of those things to be mindful of. Of those things that is also mentioned, as we mentioned regarding concern that with bidah, that at times regarding that al-bidah in general, in a summarized with that, mukhalif li-sunnah. So al-bidah mean the person is doing something which is contrary to the sunnah. So those bidah can occur regarding i'tiqadat, things regarding belief, also regarding al-af'al, regarding actions, amaliyah, and also regarding concerning that al-bidah, regarding we mentioned at-tark, the person not doing certain things that he supposed to be doing. So that's concerning al-bidah. So regarding i'tiqadat, they find that in matters considered where in sense of the person concerning that with the Prophet al-Islam have mentioned certain things that we should accept as a part of the things regarding belief. The person who go contrary to those things, then he falls into bidah. So in matters concerning i'tiqadat, where the Prophet al-Islam have outlined certain things that we should accept as a part of the belief system of Islam. The person going in contrary to those things, then he falls into al-bidah al-aqadiyah. Bidah al-aqadiyah. Then also bidah al-amaliyah, where the person where the Prophet al-Islam have either explained or have carried out or approved of certain things that he have done al-Islam or the companions did, and a person doing contrary to this. So that fall into al-bidah al-amaliyah. So the person carrying out an act contrary to the sunnah or what the salaf or the sahaba were upon. Then also bidah at-tarkiyah, where the person leaving something the Sharia have allowed or given allowance, permissibility, as a form of ta'abbud, where the person that he decide that something which is halal, regarding, for example, mentioned last concern now, eating of meat, is that I'm gonna, as a form of or getting married, I'm not going to get married as a form of getting close to Allah subhanahu, because getting married, I'm gonna be busy with my wife, then children, and these things, there'll be a lot of distraction. So for me, I'm going to just concentrate only on worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not get married. And this is the person sees as getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using this method. Then that becomes a bidah. We're leaving off marriage as a form of ta'abbud, as a form of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this is mubah. So those are the matters regarding al-bidah, and you find that people fall into those various types of bidah. And bidah concerning qawliyah, where something is mentioned in a form of ta'abbud, that there's no proof of it in the Sharia. There's no proof of it. Like a person saying in the adhan, mention Ali in the adhan. With me? So the person has an additional statement, Anna Ali waliyullah, whatever it is said. Or whatever this said. So that adding that extra sentence in the adhan becomes bidah qawliyah. Wa amaliyah. So that's concerning of those things regarding. So you find that also the Muslim regarding certain type of groups that are known for particular of those falling into those particular areas. Also the matter they discuss regarding al-bidah, that with al-bidah, regarding asbab al-bidah. What are some of the reasons why people fall into bidah? Wa intishar al-bidah. And our bidah, it also spreads. So reasons for their falling into bid'ah and also the spreading of bid'ah. There are many that are mentioned. Of those, of the reason of falling into bid'ah, asbab dukhul fil bid'ah or wuqu' fil bid'ah, regarding of that concerning ittiba al-hawa. The first, ittiba al-hawa. So following of one's desire. So rather than following the sharia, the person chooses to follow their own desire. What they like is giving precedent to that over the sharia. So ittiba al-hawa is of the reason behind people, of the reason of people falling into bid'ah, where people choose to follow their desires, their vain desires, that does not coincide with the sharia. A second, we just mention them as bullet points. A second is al-jahl bid-deen, which should be the first really. Al-jahl bid-deen. So a person having ignorance regarding the deen. Where al-jahl bid-deen fall into different things regarding concerning that. And one of the more serious of those cases where the person doesn't put interest in studying Islam, regarding even the basic things of Islam. So regarding jahl bid-deen, no interest in the person studying of Islam. Of jahl bid-deen, and the person have no interest in wanting to know about Islam. And also jahl bid-deen, also in the sense of the person not being able to identify people who are qualified that they can study from. So for the person not being able to identify people who are qualified that they can study their Islam from. So that's concerning a jahl bid-deen and the thing that goes along with it. Also, even jahl bid-deen regarding concerning our times of concerning al-fatawa. The person ignorant of those people that he should refer back to regarding fatawa, or can take their fatawa from. So not knowing of those people that we can study with and knowing their qualification. Second, also jahl bid-deen also fall into that the person also referring back to people who are not qualified regarding fatawa. Third of those matters regarding, they mention taqdeem ara al-shuyukh wal-akabir ala nusus. So the person giving precedent to the views, the opinions of shuyukh wal-akabir and people who are standing with them over that of the Islamic texts. Or adillati shar'iyya. So giving precedent to the views of shuyukh wal-akabir and people of standing over that of the nusus al-shar'iyya. So the person somewhat is elevating people beyond the position that they're truly deserving, where he place them above that of the sharia. Also with this they mention taqdeem al-aql ala naql. Also with this, the person giving precedent, giving a higher place to one's reasoning to that of the Islamic text. So the person giving reasoning, human reasoning, precedent over that of the Islamic text, Islamic sources. So the person giving, using as a main reference their ability to reason, and if they where they put their reasoning over that of the Sharia, that of the Sharia. Another, fifth, ta'alluq bi-shubahat. That people enter into things that there's shubahat, that there's doubtful matters. So opening the doors regarding things that are doubtful. Opening the doors, enter into things that are doubtful. So those of also that they mention regarding al-ghulu fi din. Also of those things, al-ghulu fi din. That also the person going overboard regarding, so being extreme regarding the deen. It's another, aywa. So ghulu fi din, so being extreme in the matters of the deen. So the person who wants to apply the deen, but he's going over the top. He's going to extreme. Where they're putting in things, and they're making things somewhat very rigid and adding, because they're going over the top regarding the deen. And it's over the top regarding al-ghulu fi deen. It can be at times regarding al-ashkhas, where the person, especially concerned, I was mentioned before, concerning shuyukh, wal-mashayikh, wal-ulama, where they go overboard, where the qawl of the shaykh becomes that of it is completely accepted without any challenge or any investigation. So the person might have a particular shaykh where that shaykh, his view is given precedent over everything else. So, as I mentioned, taqdees al-ashkhas, that's a part of ghulu regarding shuyukh, or they say righteous people. So ghulu, where the person look at people who are righteous, they start to show that respect to them, that is something that's going over the top. The person will make prostration to them, kneel to them, kiss their feet, and these type of things. When they die, the person will somewhat take their place as something which is sacred. So this is ghulu regarding ashkhas. And also the same thing occurs concerning al-mashayikh, where some may take the mashayikh where their view is become a source itself. It's unchallenged. And anyone that see different, then you're seen as an enemy. Then also they mention al-ghulu regarding ashkhas, also ghulu fi deen, regarding the person now adding things to the religion. So ghulu regarding ashkhas and ghulu regarding matters of the deen. So in certain masail they go over the top. So going over the top on certain masail, where that they start to add things, place things that are not, that is not established. So those concerning those matters regarding so you find, for example, ghulu fi deen that have existed before and still today regarding al-hukm al-ashkhas, passing judgment on others. We find that sometimes people go overboard. We find that some are referred to as takfiri, because they go overboard regarding pronouncing takfir, communicating a Muslim from Islam for reasons that are not valid. But in their mind, they see it as valid, because they are functioning on certain principles, but their principles are not properly in place. But they go overboard regarding passing judgment on individuals. And also regarding al-takfir, regarding concerning tabdi', passing judgment regarding a person being from Ahli Bidah, and also tafsiq, and also a person being from the fusaq. So those are the things that you find that ghulu regarding masail deen, regarding masail. And other things. Also added to that, those things regarding another of those reasons, asbab wuqu' fil bid'ah, taqlid al-'amma wa ta'assub ila al-mashayikh wal madha'ib. So regarding concerning that the person has this the blind following of a particular sheikh, or ta'assub, the person have this staunch approach towards a particular sheikh. He goes over the top regarding a particular sheikh. So anything the sheikh says, he has this ta'assub, this partisanship towards the particular sheikh. So anything that he says, it's okay. It's unquestioned. So you find people are like this. When they mention that sheikh, they mention his name, they give him the greatest of praise. And they'll talk about another sheikh who's equally qualified with less praise. They mention his name, Sheikh Fulan, but when they mention their sheikh, they give him all these titles and mention all these praise as a way to elevate their sheikh because of this ta'assub wa taqleed of that sheikh. So that's concerning, you have the ta'assub and also making taqleed of shuyukh, where everything the sheikh he says, they hold it to be correct. And also taqleed regarding a madhahib al-fiqhiyah, where the person might hold to a particular madhab. I'm Hanafi, and I only accept Hanafi views. I'm Shafi, only accept Shafi views. And read only Shafi book. And anything in those books, I hold them to be is correct because it is mentioned in the book. And anything else outside this, that's them. So ta'assub wa taqleed of mashayikh or madhahib al-fiqhiyya, then also something that leads to bid'ah. Where anything else that's concerned, then also they mention of this سقوط العلماء وختم العلم. So also of those things that of the causes why people fall into bid'ah, سقوط العلماء and بيان الحق, where the ulama remain silent on clarifying the haqq. And not teaching people the haqq. Khatam al-ilm. So those are the things that also, that of the reasons, the causes of bid'ah. Also they mention istidlal أو استدلال بأحاديث الموضوعة وشدة الضعف وحديث ضعيفة. So people using as a source, as a proof, hadith which is weak and fabricated and severely weak. So a person relying and using as a proof, as evidence, hadith that is looked upon as da'if, severe weakness, or hadith that are mawdu', fabricated, and the likes. And they sometimes occur because that person, that they didn't investigate a hadith thoroughly regarding its authenticity. So not investigating thoroughly the authenticity of that hadith. So they use hadith that at times would be weak and mawdu' because they didn't take the time to look properly into the ruling of that hadith. And also relying upon people who are not specialists in this field of hadith, grading. So those are of those things that are mentioned. And also mujalasatu ahli al-bid'ah wal ahwa, sitting with the people of bid'ah wal ahwa. Also of the reason a person fall into al-bid'ah, by sitting with the people of bid'ah, one's close companionship with the people of bid'ah wal ahwa is of the reason a person fall into these matters. So that's concerning of those things that are mentioned regarding asbab وقوع الناس في البدع, why people fall into al-bid'ah. The next of those things that relates to al-bid'ah, why people also is regarding concern that of those things regarding bid'ah that occurs, is because also people which follow part of jahl. The first time we mentioned what we mentioned before, al-jahl bil Islam, bil deen, and also regard that also of those things a person not aware of the sources of Islam. So also of those things that also that cause the spread of bid'ah is a person not referring back to a reliable source of Islam. So concerns of and not knowing those sources of Islam. So of the masadir al-tashri' in Islam we have what? Al-Quran, was-sunnah, wal-ijma' wal-qiyas, as-sahih. So of the sources that a person use as a reference to come to a conclusion regarding a matter in Islam, that a person use these as his main sources. The Quran, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second, al-hadith al-sahiha, authentic hadith. Third, al-ijma', where the ulama have agreed upon a matter, then that becomes a source. And fourth, al-qiyas al-sahih, that a person also uses qiyas al-sahih, that an analogy that fulfill the criteria. Then these are those sources that are used. And at times ulama might extend regarding certain things. Aqwal al-sahaba in certain matters. Ash-shari'a man qablana, istihsan, al-mursal, al-mursala, and things of that nature. So you have different adillah that's also added between the ulama regarding at times that they may use as adillah when there's nothing regarding come to certain conclusion. So those are, but the shahid is the person not aware of the source of Islam that can be used to derive a ruling. And the ilaj of what was mentioned regarding the cure is that the person doing the opposite. So rather itibal hawa, the person then act upon the sunnah regarding jahl, to learn of the deen from people who are qualified. Also, the person know to place not to give the nusus al-shari'iyah, give the Islamic sources that they take precedent over aqwal of rijal, over that of men, and all of the things that we had mentioned. That the person don't fall into ghulu, the person of concern in that he find a balanced approach to Islam, don't go over the top regarding Islam. Also the person to acknowledge regarding al-madhahib, the khilaf between the ulama, and the person gonna somewhat to take this into consideration and try to find in a matter where there's difference between the ulama, the qawl that is more in line with the dalil, with the evidence. So to try to take the view that is more in line with the dalil, then the person goes with that. Or after the least of a scenario, that a person, if he takes a particular view and unable to make that comparison, not to totally dismiss that there may be another view. So if the person is aware there's another view, not to totally dismiss them, but he acts upon the mufti that he trusts and give him that fatwa until he has come to know something different from what he was told by that qualified mufti upon the sunnah. Also for a person regarding studying of bid'ah, to know regarding that bid'ah tafawut, that bid'ah on different levels. And also by this, the ulama classify bid'ah into different category concerning al-bid'ah. So you have al-bid'ah mukaffira wal bid'ah mufassiqa. So you have bid'ah which is that takes the person outside the fold of Islam, and bid'ah that does not. So the person upon bid'ah, but he's still within the fold of Islam. So you have those type of bid'ah, where a person might take on a belief that is said to be the belief that belief is outside the fold of Islam. So for example, the person that said Quraniyun, the people who accept only the Quran and do not accept the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, then that's a bid'ah which is al-kufr. Then bid'ah al-mufassiqa, that less than that of kufr. Then also of the ulama who classify bid'ah concerning that al-bid'ah al-kulliyya wal bid'ah juz'iyya. Bid'ah kulliyya wal bid'ah juz'iyya. So bid'ah kulliyya, the person, for example, kulliyya, which is more comprehensive, where the person that he mentioned, the person said, I do not accept the sunnah at all. I do not accept what is referred to as sunnah or hadith. I don't accept this. Yadan billah. So a person will take that view, but I want to accept Quran. But anything that is said to be the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, I do not accept this. With a hadith in Bukhari, Muslim, wherever. He doesn't care whether the hadith is sahih or not, because he does not accept what? A sunnah. Kulliyah. So a complete dismissal or rejection of the sunnah in totality. That is bid'ah. Then that's kulliyah, bid'ah al-kulliyah, and also bid'ah al-juz'iyah. The person, certain things, he accepts hadith and the sunnah, but certain hadith he rejects because of aqliyah, reason which is that following of his desire. So the person, but overall said, I accept hadith, but particular hadith he may reject because of his desires. Then that is al-bid'ah juz'iyya. It is something that he rejects. So that's concerning. Then you have al-shatiya, the women concern al-bid'ah al-idafi wa bid'ah al-aqiqi. So you have different ways how they can somewhat categorize concerning al-bid'ah. of those things regarding concerning inkisar al-bidah, how to destroy concerning al-bidah. Also that, or start concerning that, mawqif al-nas bidit al-bidah, the position of the people regarding al-bidah. How the people position themselves regarding bidah. People meaning the Muslims. So of those regarding al-bidah, waqin fiha, people who are actually involved in bidah. So those people who are involved in bidah. So of those people who are actually the ones who are involved in carrying out of bidah, for the reason may be, those people are halik. Those people, they are a path of destruction. Second group of people, sakit anha, the ones who remain silent regarding bidah. They see bidah, know something the bidah, but they remain silent. Those people that follow mukhalif, those are the mukhalif. Then you have mujanib al-bidah, of those people also that they go in opposition to the bidah. Those are the people of najah. Those are the people of muwaffaq. Those are the ones who are upon the correct path. So the people regarding bidah, they fall into those three. Al-halik, those are the ones who are involved in bidah and propagating bidah and the spreading of bidah. Then we have the second, those are the sakit and the bidah, those who know something is wrong and they remain silent. Even though they may not per se participate in that bidah. But they do not clarify, they remain silent and allow the people to do what they want. And then you have concerning mujanib al-bidah, the ones who goes in opposite to the bidah. The one who goes and try to izalat al-bidah, that they try also to remove al-bidah. Then those are the people who are truly of Ahlul Sunnah. They are the ones who truly represent Ahlul Sunnah wal Athar. But also those people regarding to know that the people concerning regarding that matter, regarding that ulama have mentioned regarding concerning that in overcome those things that in the spread of the sunnah and going against bidah, that there's two things the person should, two things that of the removal of bidah, izalatul bidah. There of those things that remove of bidah, of one concerning natural ilm, an-nafi', spreading of knowledge, teaching the people the sunnah, or beneficial knowledge. So the way to remove of bidah, to destroy bidah, to repel bidah, that requires for people to the spread of beneficial knowledge and people to act upon that knowledge. But so of those things is regarding spreading of ilm al-nafi', natural ilm al-nafi', wa ihya al-amal bi-sunnah, and also for the people to raise regarding or to encourage the people and to revive the spreading of acting upon the sunnah. So knowledge with action of the sunnah. So spreading the knowledge, teaching the people, educating the people, clarifying to the people regarding al-ilm al-nafi', and also encouraging the people in bringing alive the sunnah by acting upon it. The second of those things which is muhim also, rad al-bidah. Rad al-bidah. Also to clarify matters concerning al-bidah. So at times, the one have to clarify those things of bidah. Not to speak around it, above it, but rather directly mention of those bidah and to clarify to the people in refuting of bidah and also the people of bidah. So to clarify regarding the reality of that bidah, in exposing that bidah and to caution the people about that bidah, at time that also is a part of removing of the bidah. That one of to refute al bidah. So that means so with this of refutation against bidah, it is something which is mashru', permissible, as a part of preserving the purity of Islam and the correct teaching of Islam, is that one have to clarify al bidah and to refute bidah. So whether it has been concerning the issue itself or individuals or groups. So refuting of bid'ah at times may be the individual, at times may be the group collectively, or at times it may be the issue itself. So each accordingly. But of those things to bear in mind regarding Rad al-Bid'ah or Rad al-Ali Bid'ah, that we find that those who do it properly and those who don't. So sometimes a person might want to refute and to clarify Bid'ah, but also is going about doing so correctly and properly. Because so of those things that ulama have mentioned regarding of those things to have in place regarding refuting of Bid'ah, Kash Tariq al-Bid'ah, the person know the history of that Bid'ah, how it started. So having the history and clarifying the history of that Bid'ah. Now, how it came about and the likes, and who were the ones who initially started that Bid'ah. So clarify those things, the history of that Bid'ah. So for example, of some of the ulama clarifying regarding Bid'ah of Mawlid, they're going to the issue and say, okay, when this thing started, at what time period, what were the factors that caused this Bid'ah? Then we have an idea regarding that, how this thing came about, so the person knows the history of this Bid'ah. Now, of those things regarding refuting of Ali Bid'ah, Tawthiq, Ar-Rad, bil-i'timad ala kalam al-khusum. Also a person that you rely upon the statement of the person that you're refuting, where you can verify the person did say this or did this, by way of verifying the information about that Bid'ah. And the person that you're, for example, refuting, you're refuting a person, did he do it? Did he say it? And what exactly did he say? Because sometimes it's based upon assumptions. Sometimes people, they want to refute a person that they see as Ali Bid'ah, but what the method of doing so, it is based upon assumptions.
Can you mention them 3 points against it?
Which points?
Did he do it? Did he say it? And did he go the further?
What exactly did he say?
So it means concerning what was, for example, that verifying what the person did he say, that person, what did he say? And the other points that we mentioned. What was said?
Did he do it? Did he say it?
Did he say it? Those are the things. So, for example, if we have to verify, did the person actually said this? Is it something that he said verbally? What did he actually say? What was his wordings? Or it is something a person have written in a book. Which book did the person actually, what was mentioned in that book by the person? And sometimes bear in mind regarding specific things that are said. A person who, by way of speech, I would say, for example, a person said to be of idle ilm. Sometimes a person who teaches, then he's more prone that he will have, they said, no, slip of the tongue. This occurs. Now, so the slip of the tongue at times may occur. So especially concerned that we find at times people refuting a person of the Sunnah or a person who have attachment to the Sunnah. But maybe someone said the verified, especially if the person asl, the person who is more known, the person is known to be the person who defends the Sunnah and he teaches the Sunnah and calls to the Sunnah and venerates the Salaf al-Salih and the ulama. These things are known of the person, that he upholds the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah and teaches this and calls to it. That person, as a teacher, at times may say things that is an error, that was not intended. It was done unintentionally, but he did say it. Or you perceive he said that thing. Or he said something that you perceive in a way other than what he intended. You think that he's talking about him, but you say it is about this person. But you put so you put things where you want. So it said verification of the information that the person have either said that you want to refute, or what you have written. So to verify that information that you want to refute. So that's of those process. And when the person doesn't follow this, you'll find that, and sometimes the person have istijal, they are quick to refute others. You find that they have a part 1, then they have a part 2, then they have a part 3, then they have a part 4, and they're like a silsila. It becomes all these series because you were too either hasty and didn't verify information. So this refutation you find sometimes out there, it's not following principles regarding refutation. So you find this person didn't verify this person said it or not. So you accuse the person of something that you can't verify. He said it because you heard from something that you trust. But that's not sufficient. You need to verify the information from the source itself. So sometimes a person said something, then he has to go back and correct himself. And so you have those things that at times occur.
So he's saying if the person that mentions the statement and says that thing, and then the news reaches you, for example, you, the person,
It comes to your attention.
yeah, and do you have to go to that individual and say, did you say this?
Not necessarily have to go to the individual, but a way of verifying the information. Yes, the verification could be for example, in today's time.
Now, what's after? I mean, what's after? Isn't it better to go?
No, so whichever way is better. The main thing is.
The horse's mouth, like you
No,
go
sir,
to him.
the best way to verify, you need to know, did he actually say it? Whether you may have a tape, you may ask him, but something else the person might, you understand, he may have said yes or no, depending on influence or something like. Were there witnesses there also? Did they hear what you are saying about the person? So you have various ways, because sometimes you might approach a person, and you have those things, I've heard those things on tape. A person may have said something, and was said in private or to a particular restricted audience, then it got out to the public. And the person now trying to come back on those things, and now he's saying things that it's a bit off what I'm hearing and what you are trying to clarify, it seems to be off. So something a person sometimes may even try to bend the truth in trying backtrack, as we say, bend the truth in whatever way. So sometimes actually the person directly, sometimes he's not that honest also. He's not honest with the case. So the main thing, whatever way of verifying information, then you take that approach. And there's several ways. Witnesses is something that was recorded, is something which is written. You understand? So various ways of going about doing so.
But generally, a person is gonna act or speak a specific way depending on the situation he's in. So, like you said, if he's in private, he's gonna say something a certain way. And when he's in the limelight, he's gonna say something different. That's just normal. That's why they do jury, for example, in court. You said something, some next place, but when they put you on the jury now, you say something totally different.
The Jews said, in the Sharia concern, said in the case concerning refutation of people, you understand that the case of the person now being, so I said in the case of refutation regarding yes, that's what I'm saying, that sometimes asking a person directly, you understand, is that the best method? At times, you understand, so you say, look at the situation and say, okay, what's the best method? Because a person sometimes said, no, but said, the Muslim said the person the da'i. We use the word the person the da'i, the person the teacher. In teaching, said the person talking about thing which is private matters, then that's a different matter. You might find inconsistency and maybe consistency, but those are private matters, not related to the deen and teaching people. But the person talking about, you may be talking about a matter which is a private matter, we said in a private setting, but it's a matter which is deeniyah. You with me? So I'm talking to maybe a small group of people, but a matter about deen, we're sitting, having lunch, or in a private sitting, but we're talking about matters regarding a deen. So the thing that I said, that is said there should represent a deen to the person's best knowledge. But I would say something, and the same information you will ask me again in a public setting, I should be saying the same thing, because about the deen. But if another person says something in private, and then when the person says something in public completely different, you see, we said there's inconsistency. And matters which should be said fundamental matters. Because a person might say something and a matter concerning deen in private sitting, but he's speaking about the deen. But that was the view that he held then, but then tomorrow he changed his view. That sometimes occurs in matters where there's khilaf. ijtihad. But in certain things, so it's to everything to be weighed up. Now, and also regarding al-rudud, so said that it was the main point regarding verifying the information before you start to refute, especially in a public arena platform. Verify the information first. You're gonna write a book, verify the information first. So that's a story, a case that one sheikh that I met, and so he said that he went to a particular sheikh and said no, that he just wanted us kind of set the record straight regarding himself with that particular sheikh. So he said, okay, I've written all these books. I'm giving them to you to read through them and to see if there's anything that you see that I need correction, bring it to my attention directly. Then I'll correct it if it is an error did occur. And there's a legitimate reason to say an error did occur. So take these things, these books, and check them. Then next thing you know that there was a refutation, and no one brought it to his attention. So sometimes you understand. So sometimes it's out to assess the situation. But refutation says that, and think that says that was taken out of context. So I said refutation is a thing where the person needs to verify. Go to the person's book to see is there consistency in this matter, or it's a matter of ijtihad, and also is it a matter of ijtihad. That is given an opinion that there's other opinions, but he has come to a particular opinion on that matter, even though there's other positions that from legitimate sources, from legitimate scholars, but he more inclined towards that particular view. But there's a matter where there's some level of ijtihad. So knowing those issues, that matter of ijtihad and matter which is not matter of ijtihad.
So you see, if you can't verify
the source
to a degree where you're supposed to, and you still heard something about a person, but you can't verify it in the correct manner, would you just leave?
And then leave it. Sometimes it can be verified, and you leave the matter until you can make that verification. You understand? Because if you act without verification, you're acting on assumption. You could be right and you could be wrong. And because that's the honor of another Muslim, then you tawakkuf. Then the person has somewhat hold back until the matter been verified. So in the Sharia, for example, generally concerns that accusation concerning that certain type of crimes. If you cannot bring enough witnesses, a person might witness, two-person witness zina. But you need what? 4. But you did witness something. You did see it. But you have another brother with you. Both of you saw everything, start to end. But when you go to the judge, you don't have how many? 4 witnesses. Then what you do? You have to just leave it. But not that you didn't see that you saw something wrong. Or you didn't say what you saw was something wrong. But you don't have sufficient evidence to take it to the judge. So the main thing that's so verifying according to the limitation of the Sharia. So if you don't have enough, the source, reliable source, then you pause until you get that source. Move to the next matter also they mentioned regarding concerning that. Refutal of bid'ah said, bid'ah of different degrees. Tafawut. So the person will understand that bid'ah I'm refuting. Do I need to the level of that bid'ah? Is it bid'ah such? Where does it lies in the scheme of things? What's the level of its intishar? What's the level of the spread of that bid'ah? Is it something which is widely spread? Or something that it now affects concerning that it now having an impact under the general tulabul ilm and also the general awam of Muslim? But my friends, as something which is a view that is out there, I mean, you may see it as a bid'ah, but it's only known to just khasatun nas. Just a restricted amount of people know of this. Then how you approach that, then you have to weigh up all those things. It's something which is widespread, something that is new, but it has the potential to spread wide and far and have an impact severe. All those things are weighed up. So there's rules and guide the shahid regarding refuting bid'ah, there are certain rules and guidelines that the person should be mindful of. There may be certain bid'ah that you can just generally talk about, and that's it. Because you're not remaining silent on that matter. You're clarifying it, which is something which is known and established. So everything needs to be weighed up and put in their right place and order. But you find that some of the shabab, some of the duat, they enter into certain thing that is beyond them. They take on thing that is that really something that needs to be taken on and brought to an environment. For example, refutation between others. That a person might refute someone that no one knows who this person is. No one knows him. No one knows his books. But so no one knows that that person of this view, someone refuted him, but that even those discussions between the people who are only in that particular field, only they understand that topic to that depth. So a person now take that on and bring it to a public that have no idea what is being discussed. And bring names, and he said this and he said that. Even a person who is relating the matter don't understand the topic. For the fact that you just want to side with a particular sheikh over another. A particular person over another. The sheikh that you're siding with may be in a rightful position, but the issue that you are bringing to the people may not be suitable for them. They don't understand the issue. You yourself will find it difficult to explain the issue. The people, they don't know of the issue, but when you are the one who brought it, made the issue become an issue amongst them. If you had remained silent, the issue would have died. But you spoke, you brought the issue, gave it life. So that's concerning the thing that a person has to take into consideration. So you find that type of, we said they can lead to al-fawda. It leads to chaos. Leads to chaos. And also they mentioned regarding refuting that the person still leave the door open for the person to, that he may change his view and come to the correct path. So don't see that also concept where sometimes the person, how they refute the person as an individual, the person, they call you names, the worst of names. Is that needed? They said, the Salaf said, at times concerned now, calling people names is not something which is ilmiya. It's not something which is ilm. Because anyone can call anyone any name. And the Prophet of Islam never used to call people, said, abusive, derogative names. The Prophet of Islam is our best example. Abu Bakr, the Salaf, in most part from the Sahaba, that wasn't their way of how they did things. Yes, it may occur with some, but is knowing, as we said, knowing the circumstance why that was done. Knowing the circumstance why they did such and so, they actually use derogative names. Why was that done? But for us now to adapt this as a normal way of our speech, then that becomes problematic. That becomes, is that the way of the Salaf really? And the way of the ulama? We might find that 10 ulama of that time, one may have that approach, but others, is that the way of the majority in most era of the ulama? Or some may take that approach, but majority does not. And maybe go back to the person, their character. That certain people in their character, they're a bit what? They're a bit harsh. They use certain type of wordings, but that's their character. And you might find majority, that's not them. We said Arab, those people, the Bedouin, that they're a bit harsh in their character. But the people who are not like that, Baladi, the person of the city, is not like that. He's more refined, if you want to use that word. So to understand that is not all the time we need to be, we said, in a sense of calling people name where that also it helps to push them away. Because the way that the name that we call them is uncalled for. So all those things to take into consideration. where instance with that do not close the door completely, and it shows regarding the name calling, it's not a sign of wara. It's not a sign of a person, it's not a sign of a person piety. That's not a sign of piety because calling people the worst of names. Nam? And then you mock the person. Nam? Mocking the person. Then those things are concerning ilmiya, and the book says that that's not the way. Things like that doesn't strengthen your evidence. And something you find out, the name calling and the mocking of the person and degrading the person because there's no evidence. Or whatever going to be used is not strong enough. So the way to kind of someone to make your thing, you use harsh words to replace the weakness of your evidence.
They say that when you lost the battle, that's what a person resorts to.
Hey, so that's the thing. You understand? So name calling when a person is said sometime behind it is a cover up where the person doesn't have the evidence to prove their point. So that's concerning of those matters regarding concerning bid'ah. The hadith is concerned to clarify regarding concerning matters relating to bid'ah. We have said much regarding al-bid'ah. So that inshallah ta'ala, as mentioned, the hadith show regarding concerning bid'ah that is rejected, and that the Muslim regarding ahdath to leave away those things which is newly invented matters concerning ad-deen. And we are covered sufficient points relating to that. So that inshallah ta'ala will stop. وَبِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى تَوْفِيقٌ وَهَادِي السَّبِيلُ وَالْآخِرَةُ وَالْحَمْدُ لِلْعَالَمِينَ.
I was going to ask a question.
Ask.
You know, one of the points you mentioned is like the silence, yeah, of the ulama. When it comes to an action happening, so like maybe a munkarat is going on, for example. So some people will use that, yeah, as they will use that, yeah, as an excuse to say, okay, the ulama like coward, they are this, that, for example, you know. So what can we say in this situation? How can we defend that? I mean, how can we shut the person down?
Sometimes we're not trying to. Looking at matter is not all the time that we look at matter to shut people down or to defend. Understand? The main thing is to give the correct position on the matter.
No.
You understand? So you might find, yes, certain things that we said, in most part, that munkarat is occurring. We said the ulama, where some may speak, but we might find others who may speak. So I think that munkar is still being rejected, or being spoken about, being clarified. We'll find that everyone not speaking, then that becomes problematic. You with me? So we find that everyone going to silence about a clear munkar, then that becomes problematic. We'll find that at times, that munkar, if some have spoken, then that's sufficient. It doesn't mean that everyone have to speak. Clear? So that's the thing. So the main thing that of the ulama, some have spoken, it doesn't necessitate that everyone have to speak.
No.
But we get a view from, there's 10 alim, we need every one of them to, one of them has spoken, that's sufficient.
But they will say, one of the things that they used to say is like, but we need to know, it's not jar, basically, it's not said in public. We need to know. We need to see them refuting, you know, like refuting them on the radio, on the TV, you know, on the mimbar, for example.
As I said, sometimes people ask for things that is even going over the top. No. You understand? In Qadr, we go into the bar, we say, if the thing is the munkar. Now, if some said, one, to clarify, is that actually a munkar? Second, are you certain no one has spoken among the ulama have made inkar of that munkar? One is sufficient. Is it fard al-ain that everyone has to speak, or is it fard kifaya that some speaks? You understand? So I said, if the person wants to go back and forth regarding that, you need this particular alim to speak, we said, we are putting conditions that are maybe not needed. We're going over the top. You need alim fulan that he must be. The main thing that thing is spoken of and has been made clear. And the person asks him, if it's clear for you, then why you need, what's the question? What's the issue? If the matter is clear to you, now, why you need everyone else to speak about it on the mimbar, to speak about it all the time? Once is enough. As they see, I've said, speak about it. As they see it is necessary to speak about it, maybe once is sufficient. Twice, but depending on the situation. But the main thing that the matter has been clarified, it is not required that I have to come from a particular alim. For example, the mufti of the country have to be the one to speak. It's not necessarily that he has to speak. Or the person from this organization has to be the one to speak. The fact that a person of ilm have clarified it, then that is sufficient. But when we start to go into iman, then it becomes difficult. You mean that people are trying to point fingers of the ulama, and in most part because they do not acknowledge those ulama, but they want to point fingers. Clear?
Yeah.
Obilai.
So, one last question. I didn't ask.
It's okay.
It's like some excuse some people used to use here from, like some of the ulama we have now. They said, okay, the ulama of the past, they will say, for example, Bukhari and Muslim, they used to have disagreement and they used to have followers. If they are sitting in this one, sitting in that one, sitting. So they say, basically, we are allowed to choose this side of Ahlul Sunnah, and some people choose that side. How can we, because I've spoken to people that say this, how can we, explain to them like this kind of choosing sides, I'm going to align to A and you align to B, this is wrong.
Now the response to those people goes back on this side thing of Ahlul Sunnah doesn't have a side over here and a side over there. There's only one Ahlul Sunnah. There's only one Ahlul Sunnah. So not Ahlul Sunnah, side A, you're with this team and you have with this team. You understand that seems so said, and the difference that occur between sometimes that's the first thing. And Islam is against concerning the Muslim being divided. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. So the asl of the Muslim that we try to be as united as possible, based upon the haqq. So the difference will come that when we said difference, we said side mean that we have split, or side where I like that alim, but I still recognize everyone. And still respect everyone. And no matter that they're discussing, I'll see what all have to say, then come to, but I like him more for the reason, maybe especially in my science. I gravitate to this one because he's a person of my takassus. And we just know that. So a person might gravitate toward a particular individual. That's normal amongst human beings. But it doesn't mean that you disqualify the efforts of others. And believe that anyone who goes against the person that you like, he becomes your enemy. Because he disagree. Then that becomes a problem. And I said also the example that are given regarding, for example, people said sometimes we discuss these matters. I said, if you're going to discuss certain these matters, ask the person, these matters that you want to discuss about the difference in Muslim and this, and taking this matter, have you studied this matter in depth and understand this matter? Or you just mentioning things that you have heard from others, but you yourself haven't studied the matter? Then there's no point in having a conversation with the person, because he doesn't understand the matters. So I'm talking about Bukhari, have a difference with Muslim in what? For to say that I'm going to take a side of Bukhari and Muslim, in what matter did Bukhari and Muslim have a difference where they go in two different sides opposing each other? In what matter? So bring that example where Bukhari and Muslim, or any two alim of the Sunnah, and so the difference where they had to split into two complete different groups, opposing groups. Bring me those proofs. Bring me the example and the case. Because sometimes people use this hypothetical case that does not exist, just to prove a point, just to think they're proving a point. And also said that go back to this difference between, for example, Bukhari and Muslim is a matter regarding you all this hadith to be authentic and this hadith to be authentic. Not, then that's thinking those things occur. But the principles are one, but they may come to a different conclusion on a particular hadith that occur then and will occur today and will continue to occur. That's not an area we go into different sides. This alim may hold this particular thing to be halal. Or this man consider it is something which is it something which is wajib or mustahab? So the difference that they both hold it to be permissible, but one hold it to be of the highest level regarding is wajib and must to be done. The other hold it to be what? Mustahab, preferred to be done. Wear niqab, not wear niqab. Do we go into different camps or become enemies of each other? Both awlat is permissible, but one awlat is a must to be done, the other awlat is something we must have, but it doesn't mean that we fall into two separate groups. That's not the case. So I said, no, cases, you're looking at the cases. So the usul is the usul are fixed. If they're in place, we shouldn't have differences where we start to divide and go against each other. But we'll have each person, two persons will have difference in something. A husband and wife will have different views on certain matters, but certain things in the house, our core matters, there's no difference. Sir? Should be. And when you have those core, when those core things are different, that's when you have what? Divorce. But this thing, should I buy orange juice or should I buy apple juice? We can live with those differences. But not having no food in the house, then that's a problem. Now, so said, is knowing that level of those differences. And know the person, does the person understand what they're talking about? I said, with jahl, people speak about things they don't understand. And they confuse themselves. I said, they bring shubha on themselves. Remember the problem that bringing shubha on themselves, you go into issues that are not the issues of differences. Okay, khalas.
Okay, the question is, maybe using a hadith in not its proper place, maybe that might fall into the category of a bid'ah. I'll give an example, yeah? You know, they say, the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said the best sadaqah is to give cold water. To give a person a drink of water, cold water, yeah? I'm paraphrasing, inshallah. And supposing you on a cold day, go and visit a brother, and he asks for a cup of tea and he give you cold water and say this is the best sadaqah. Would that be you? How would you like advise or like rectify or like even like try and like advise someone like this, or was that bid'ah, or was it just like a personal understanding the hadith?
Now, so that, some said regarding concern that matter that you mentioned regarding concern to the problem, you're paraphrasing. If and you said so, with those cases, now it goes back to what I said, gulu fi deen. Sometimes gulu can occur regarding, as I said, not putting things in their right place, regarding how to apply the hadith in a practical way. So no one concerns. So the hadith may certain circumstance that revolves around the hadith, right? But it's not a hadith that is used to maybe use general. For example, you said a hadith, if you said, so verify, said, is the hadith authentic? For example, you said, giving the best of sadaqah is giving cold water. So the first thing concerned, is that hadith authentic? And also, is that hadith is to be taken across the board that anyone, I said, even so the best doesn't mean that it is something which is wajib, because something is mentioned fadila, it is something which is maybe highly recommended, but if a person do opposite, then is not blameworthy. And also, is that hadith in what context? Because it may be a time that it was said in a time where that eat, than a time when it is winter. So it just put in and certain things is putting things in their proper context. Where I said cases that I have known a person, for example, of cleaning with stones. Now that as a part of istinja, one can use stone. So I said, no, if a person will use a stone, they said any stone I use, it doesn't matter. So they use the most roughest of stones to clean themselves. So a person permissibility is there to use stone, but you have to, it didn't mean that just any stone that would be harmful to you. Clear? So it's not applying things in its proper context. And that's it. Sometimes the bid'ah occur because of not applying things in the proper context. That does occur. The people came to the Prophet Islam house and I mentioned concerns that regarding concern that once what he did, one heard, I'm going to fast all the time. You understand? So they're putting things in place of sometimes putting things out of context. Not going to fast all the time, pray all the time, not get married. So sometimes putting things with good intention, but putting things out of context. Because out of Prophet Islam function, they wanted to motivate them, one concern pushed themselves, but was out of context. So that's also the thing, understanding things within the context. So overzealousness sometimes can push people to go into bidah. With that, inshallah ta'ala, one more.
Just one more. According to this hadith, in terms of what we're speaking about, bid'ah, the way people refute people now, today, isn't that a bid'ah within itself?
As some of them says that some of the bid'ah, says some of the way people refute is a bid'ah itself. Some not said that. So it says that you have ways of being done correctly and a way being done incorrectly. You understand? So some of the refutation that may be put, then also it itself is something which is muhdith. Something that you understand is not correct. So sometimes in trying to respond to something, you also do something which is wrong. And sometimes because of over zeal and hastiness and not having the knowledge to combat that thing. So the person sees something wrong but doesn't know how to correct it. Or the way that he went about, he created a greater harm. So all those things to be considered. With this, inshallah ta'ala, will end. وَبِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى تَوْفِيقُ وَهَذِهِ السَّبِيلِ